All right, so my name is Joel Day. I was one of those volunteers, and it was so good I had to come back for a second round. So this discussion is going with the topic of need for speed. I wanted to talk a little bit about Azure DevOps. So Microsoft rebranded one of its premier developer tool platforms, which is Team Foundation Server. They rebranded it a few times. It was Team Foundation Server, then it was Visual Studio Online, then it was Visual Studio Team Services. Well, they finally settled on the Azure name because if you put Azure on it at Microsoft, then you're a winner, you're a rock star. So now Team Foundation Server is called Azure DevOps. There is an on-prem version called Azure DevOps Server. It is the exact same code base, just for on-prem. They're fantastic tools. Microsoft made a lot of effort to give developers what they want, and I am super excited about the changes they're making in Azure DevOps. So the objectives for today's presentation, I have 20 minutes, so I'm going to blaze really fast. I'm going to give a brief introduction to DevOps, the actual topic, and then I will do an overview of Azure DevOps. And I will do that by walking through a common scenario. It's a pretty fun scenario, so I hope you all enjoy it. Out of scope for this, an in-depth discussion of Azure DevOps. So we do not have time. I actually do an hour and a half to 2 hour discussion on Azure DevOps, and even then it's not enough time. I have a full day event, and that's usually where we get into all of the good stuff. So if you want to learn more about Azure DevOps, come see me afterwards. So to start off, I have a video, and it goes along with the theme of the need for speed. Now, this video, when you watch it, I feel adequately describes DevOps in a way that I think everyone can understand. So I'm just going to hit play. I might skip a little bit forward just because of time. Let's see. Should be going.
But Holland comes in for a pit stop. Time to refuel and change tires. Lou Moore himself changes the tires. Only 4 crew members, including the driver, are allowed to work on the car. It's a tense time. Holland stays in his seat, anxious to get away. Let's watch.
It's kind of like I-495. Actually, I think this is faster than I-495. See, you got a water cup. That's pretty cool. They're almost done, I promise.
The tires are changed at last. A crewman polishes the windshield as Holland moves away just 67 seconds after he stopped.
So that video right there perfectly describes DevOps. Now, Microsoft... All right, that was my presentation. Thank you very much. Any questions? So Microsoft has a definition of DevOps. This is given to us by Donovan Brown. He is one of the lead developers on Azure DevOps, and he describes DevOps as the union of people, process, and products to enable continuous delivery of value to the end users. Now, one of the parts I want to stress here is value. So we're not talking about software. We're not talking about virtual machines. We're talking about value. And this is kind of where you get the DevOps portion. Historically, developers and operations have had this kind of opposing set of metrics that they're scored on. Operations, they want to keep uptime. Well, the the largest threat to uptime is change. And what does a developer want to do? They want to get their products into production. They want to change things. So now you have people that want uptime and stability and people that want to give value in the form of change. So a change that brings everything down is not value for the end user. A stable platform that doesn't have any features does not give value to the end user. So DevOps is where you have to figure out how you can bring those two together in order to provide that value at the end. Really quickly, just to highlight some of the things in here. Let's see if I can write on here. This person up here at the top, he didn't move a muscle during the entire, I think it was 1.93 seconds that this tire change went on. He was observing. This is one of the crucial parts of DevOps. This is why this video works so well. This person was observing to figure out how to do better next time. So if you're not collecting telemetry, if you're not collecting user feedback, you're not able to be agile and you're not able to transition into a place where you're delivering value to the end user. One thing I thought was very interesting back here, there was a secondary person with a car jack just in case in the back. High availability, disaster recovery. These are things that are required in order to increase your stability, but deliver the changes that your end users require. So with that, I want to transition into what is Azure DevOps. So Azure DevOps is a product. It's part of that people, process, and products union. Azure DevOps is a suite of tools that include not only your work items, so work item tracking, but you have a CI/CD pipeline, continuous integration, continuous deployment. You have Git built in. That was actually one of the main features that was requested. Microsoft is fully in support of Git, so much so that we bought GitHub. Talk about testing. Having integrated test plans, all in the same suite, where you can take the results of the test plans and bring them back as work items so that developers can then link code changes into deployments, and then you have tracking all throughout. That is why Azure DevOps is a fantastic tool. Now, one thing about Azure DevOps, it plays very well with the entire ecosystem. I actually put that slide in just for that transition. I thought that was pretty fun. But Azure DevOps is more than just the tools that it comes with. It enables your existing tools to work with it. In fact, I've been on site and done Azure DevOps deployments where we didn't actually use the Azure DevOps platform. All we used it for was to tie together Jenkins with a Chef deployment using Jira as the ticketing system. So imagine where you can take a Jira ticket and tie it directly to a GitHub deployment that kicks off a Jira build where all these systems don't share common usernames and passwords, where Azure DevOps does the orchestration. So with that, let's jump into a demo. So I said this is going to be a fun demo. So let's discard the annotations. I'm going to jump right into Azure DevOps just so you guys can kind of see it. Now, Mother's Day just came up, and you know, unlike most people, I didn't get my wife flowers or chocolates. I built her a website. Let's see, how do I get this there? Yeah, yeah. Actually, she was very excited. My wife is an awesome lady, and she's watching. So I built my wife a website. So she runs a preschool. And she wanted to expand her web presence, and I said, you know what, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it for Mother's Day. I stayed up all night on Saturday, and I got it out, and it is fantastic. So let me show you the website that I made for my wife. So here's my lovely wife. Brighter Days Preschool. You know, I have a great, looks good. Here's the curriculum. A nice about page, shows off her degrees. Yes, she has more degrees than myself. Contact page, you know, everything's great. And then I decided to show my wife on her phone. And then I realized something. In mobile mode, when you go from page to page, the menu does not close automatically. Oh no. So what did I do as a developer? Well, the first thing you should always do is you should create a work item for it. So I went into Azure DevOps, into my work items, and I created a work item that said close menu on navigate. So that's a feature that I needed to add to the platform. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go to my Kanban board. I'm going to take this work item, and I'm going to move it over into the oh, it's not in the backlog. Let me add it to the backlog real quick. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to assign it to myself, and I'm going to move it to the active state. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to say this is now being worked on, so it's active. It's owned by myself. I'm going to save it. And now everyone that's on this project, myself, knows what I'm working on. So when, the boss, myself, comes to me and says, hey, what are you working on? I can say, look at my Kanban board, and you can see everything I'm working on. So I'm going to jump right into the code. So I'm using Visual Studio Code here. And if you haven't used Visual Studio Code, it is fantastic. I actually launch Visual Studio Code more than full-fledged Visual Studio most of the time just because it's so fast. It gives me pretty much everything I need. So right here I can see exactly what code needs to be added. So I'm going to quickly add it. Did you see that? That was pretty fast. So I've added the code to make the navigation change. I'm going to save. I'm going to jump back into, save it. I'm going to jump back into my application. It's going to refresh. I'm going to open it up. And when I go to another page, sure enough, the menu closes. So we have finished the work item. I'm going to jump back in. I'm going to set it from active to closed. I'm going to save it. And then we're done. Well, I don't know if you can see this up here, but this is running on my local host. So we're actually not done. We need to get this into the cloud because that's where this website lives. So before I do that, I'm going to do some more tests. I'm going to look. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to go to a different page. I'm going to notice, oh, wait. There's another bug. The menu closes, but it doesn't scroll to the top of the page. So I'm going to add a bug. Come in, go back to the work items. I'm going to quickly add a bug. I'm going to say does not scroll to top on navigate. I'm going to assign it to myself. And I'm going to set the status as new. I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to actually fix this bug as well. So sure enough, in the code, we got to add a window scroll to top on our navigation event. I'm going to save it. Come back in. And sure enough, if I scroll to the bottom and I navigate to a different page, now we go to the top. So I fixed a bug, and I've finished a work item. Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to commit this back to the repo. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to do a git add from the command line. I'm going to do git commit message fixed stuff because that's about as specific as I get on my commits. Because I'm going to attach all the work items so everyone knows what I fixed because they can go to the work items. And then I'm going to push it to the repo. It's going to come up. And if everything goes great, sure enough, come back in here. I should see in the repo this commit. If I go into my branch, I should see just now was modified. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into those work items, and I'm going to associate the commit I just created to the bug and to the work item that I finished. So in here, I can come in and add a link. I'm going to select the branch. Actually, I want to select the commit. Look at the last one I did. Fix stuff. Very, very pithy. Hit OK. I'm going to say that this bug is resolved. I'm going to save it. So now what does this do? If someone comes back to this bug and they say, well, show me how you fixed it, they can very easily click on the link that I created to the change set. It should launch the change set, and they should be able to see exactly what changes I made in that commit. So they can see that in there, during code review, that is where that bug should have been fixed. Very quickly, you're able to see it visually, and all of this is happening in the browser. Great. Now let's get this into production. So the last thing I'm going to show you real quick is pipelines. So if you're familiar with Jenkins for builds, this is a very similar interface. So I created a build. And I look in here. I have a couple of steps. This is built in YAML. I'm basically I'm running the Angular. This is running Angular. So I'm going to run some npm install scripts. I'm going to copy some files, and then I'm going to archive them into I'm going to zip them up, and then I'm going to push those zips into my publish archive. So down here where it says artifacts, it's actually going to show up as an artifact. Now, I actually didn't write this YAML. What I did was I created I created a new build pipeline using a drag and drop interface. Instead of YAML, I did gave it the ability to drag and drop it. When I did that, this is still YAML. I just copied the YAML and then pasted it into this one. That way, let's see, I can actually show it in a different browser. That way, I don't have to memorize all of the YAML commands. So I actually pulled it from here. So if I go into builds, and I edit this build, I can take a look at individual steps instead of the YAML code. So here, very similar. I'm copying, I'm running some npm, I'm archiving, and then I'm publishing. Well, at any point in time, I can come in here and I can say, well, view the YAML. I can copy it from here, and then I can paste it in my other YAML. Now, the big thing about the YAML is that actually gets committed with the project. So if I change the build process in my branch, I can then commit that without messing up every other build process. In this build, if I change the build process, it is tied to the project. So if I change this, if I add a new item, say let's send something to an S3 bucket in AWS. So AWS. If I came in here and I said let's do an S3 upload. Now, if I saved this, it would mess up this build for everybody. But if I take and copy the YAML and put it into the build, then it only breaks it for myself. So that's one of the big benefits of having builds as YAML as opposed to having the nice drag and drop interface. So I'm going to quickly jump back in. So this build script, after it's done, I have a release pipeline. So I have the continuous integration and then the continuous deployment. So if I look at this pipeline is very nice. It says, okay, what artifacts am I using to start off with? And then what are the stages? Now, I only have one stage because it's a small project, but you could imagine where I could come in here and I could say, well, what if I had something like this? Let's see. What if I had an integration environment that then fed into a production environment? But let's say we had multiple production environments. Let's say we had one environment in AWS and one in Azure. What if we had one in Azure Commercial and one in Azure Gov? What if we had an environment running on my local server at my house and one running in the cloud? I actually saw a video where someone built a release pipeline with 63 different deployment environments. Yeah, including, I think he said that it had Server 2000, Windows Server 2000 running SQL Server 2003, all the way up to the latest and greatest SQL 2019 on Server 2019. So 63 environments. Now, what does this give you? Now, if you're operations and you want to guarantee that something is going to run in production in every single configuration you have, well, what if you built every single configuration as code, And then you told all of your developers, hey, you must deploy and test your code in all 13 of these environments before I'll let it go into production. Well, if I'm a developer and I say, well, if I can prove that my code runs in those environments, will you just push it into production right then? And then operations is going to say, yes, we're going to make the barrier high so that we feel comfortable, and you're going to have to figure out how to get through it. That puts the pressure on the developer, and developers love puzzles. So if you say the pieces are in your court, and you get to play and build the puzzle, that's going to make the developer happy, but it's also going to make sure that they're going to build code that will work in production, regardless of the type of environment that you're running. So you can see, you can get very complex very quickly. Now, this pipeline is very simple. I'm going to go back. I'm going to remove all the changes. And I'm going to show you something. So in the build, during the build script, I actually get the verbose logging of all of those steps. So I can come through the command prompt and I can see, did my job run correctly? Here's me receiving, this is the getting all of the code from Git. Here is doing the Node.js install. I can go through, I can see how was the output of each of these steps. At the end, I'll be able to go and grab those artifacts. So I came to the artifacts, do the drop down. Here's the zip file that we just created. I can download this onto my local computer. I can open it up and I can make sure that all the files are there correctly. Not only that, but this zip file is now immutable, meaning it's not going to change. Now, if you have an immutable artifact that you really like if you have that build for your production system that is rock solid, it may not have all the features, it may not be the fastest, but it's rock solid. You have the Alamo. You can go into your release and you can say, hey, this release that we had that had this one immutable artifact, we're going to flag that. We're going to say that's the Alamo. If everything goes down, I'm going to re-release the Alamo. We're going to get back into a stable position. I'm going to open the bugs. We're going to fix it. And then we're going to go to the new version. And that's the benefit of having your artifacts separated from, having your build separated from your release pipeline. So in this release pipeline, we actually release out to a production environment. That's a if my fingers typed it correctly. So here is the actual site running on the internet. And if we drop it down and we take a look at the mobile interface, we should see that when we go from one location to the next, the menu does collapse. If I scroll down and I go back to a different place, the menu scrolls to the top. So we're able to release based on the code changes that we make all the way through our dev environment, all the way up into the production, completely automated. And if I had more people on my team, I could come in and I can set gatekeepers. I can say, hey, you are the tester. I can't move from my integration environment to my production environment until you, as the tester, say that it is good to go. And if you have a Jenkins build, you can have Jenkins be that process. If you have Chef as your deployment, you can push to Chef. If you just want to use Azure DevOps as your platform to do all your orchestration, you can do that. So hopefully from this presentation, this quick presentation, you saw that DevOps does bring efficiency, it brings speed, and most importantly, it unifies both the developer with the operations managers. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Joel.